So Hannah wants us to talk about burnouts. Burnouts. We're going to talk about burnouts, we're going to talk about cars, we're going to talk about wheels, drifting and smoke. No, I think and let's be honest, it's a bit flavour of the month, but it's a thing. People burning out, not in cars, at work and at home. Or both, right? They might be burning out in cars after having big days at work. I mean, that might be a thing. They're just like trying to let off some smoke, some steam. Some smoke. And try and do it.
It's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. So we'll talk about burnout, and let's be honest, if you're copping hours and hours and hours, it doesn't matter how many hours, it's all based on perspective and what you're capable of doing and how to balance your life and work. There is a time where it might seem work or personal life is too much for what you're doing. And no amount of Instagram motivation around you need to be better at time management is going to help. People need practical tools on how to remove what is not a priority and insert what is a priority, insert how to say no effectively, and maybe reduce the amount of saying yes, like as a couple of things. But I think burnout culture is a thing for people and for us. You and I have done the hours. We've had times where we look like shadows of ourselves after just getting pumped with task after task after task. So it's probably worth digging into. What do you reckon?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. The irony, right, is we talked about burnouts, steam. The term you and I have always used at a personal level is I'm gassed. I'm gassed out, man. Like I've just run out of gas. What's interesting though is it's not necessarily the hours on the tools that does it. It's often the content of the work that you're doing. And there's some pretty cool spin-offs in terms of ideas on the topic, insofar that, you know, there's like you don't get tired doing things you love. You don't get tired doing things you love, and all sorts of abbreviations of the same concept. And there's an element of truth to that. And so you and I have cranked out some serious hours in all sorts of forums and environments, but sometimes you just have this ability to keep going and get to the end of it and still be happy and still feel content of having done it. You don't feel gassed. You actually feel quite proud and content that you're happy that you did what you set out to achieve.
Get the shot of dopamine then.
Yeah, right. So it's not always, people try and put a mathematical spin on this, and they go to clinical and they say, 8 hours work or 10 hours work. It's like, it depends. If you're doing something you love, somehow you just seem to have an endless amount of energy. It's like the Friedrich Nietzsche, he who has a why can endure almost any how. It's along that concept. And so I've got like a bit of a different spin on this in my mind. It's like some people call, it's Henry.
Hey, Henry, treat yourself.
There's a bit of a different spin on this. Some people claim to be burnt out, and they haven't even started. And you and I have seen that.
Yep.
And if you ever want to burn a reputation at an individual level, that's a good place to start. When it's time for the team to surge and you're not surging, you'll get burnt out, but it's not burnout in the sense that your energy has run out. It's that your social rapport has been reduced, and therefore your drive or your value has been diminished, and therefore you don't seem to have the energy that everyone else gets from the serotonin that they're receiving from the group or the pack.
I mean, there's a point in there, exactly as you said. There's people that will focus on the task, and there's people that will focus on the people.
Yeah.
People like, I get a lot of joy and energy about doing this task, or I get a lot of joy and energy and drive of working with these people regardless of the task.
Right. And so I think the temptation here is, you open a topic like this, and the temptation is to go chastising organizations, because that's easy, because that's a nameless beast, right? It's a faceless beast. It's nameless, it's faceless, and you can attack it, without repercussions. It's easier, and it's a cop-out. At an individual level, you got to ask yourself, why do you get up each day, and what things do you draw energy from? Yeah, that's a very subjective and personal question to answer, and it's very difficult to answer. But people who are burnt out often never went to the start line and said, well, where do I need to be in order to do things of value that I know I'll draw energy from? They didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
What they did was they just bumbled out into an environment, and then the environment demanded things of them, as environments do, and in response, they were left wanting. And that's that disjunction between the expectation and the reality, the idealism and realism. Like, it's that piece. I feel like, put it this way, when we started the business, right? We started this business. How many hours do you think we cranked out in the first, like, on average per week?
All of them.
All of them.
Everyone, single one of them.
Day and night, international clients, right? But you and I were having an absolute buzz doing it. It was hard. It was exhausting. Our partners were doing the right thing. They were trying to take the load and try and give us space to do what we had to do to get the momentum behind the thing. That's cool. But it wasn't burnout. So if you went down, so to wind back to the original point, if you go down this clinical path of going, or if you're doing 10 hours, you're going to burn out, that's BS. It's amateur hour.
It's unwinnable.
Well, it's also just a very low resolution way of thinking about the problem. But there is such a thing as burnout.
Correct.
When it happens, it will knock you for six. Like, it will hit you. When it hits you, it calls on us to do things that are different to what we've done previously. The only way you're going to figure out what those things are, i.e. what led to the burnout, is going, well, why did this happen? And I'm just want to remove some of the go-to variables that often get thrown around, so people might actually think about it in a slightly different lens and go, what is it about this job that doesn't give me energy?
And am I connecting it to the right thing? So,
Right.
for instance, we see a lot of it in toxic cultures, or in people that hate their jobs and all that. It's like, well, why are you still there? It's like, well, I need the money. It's like, what do you need the money for? It's like, well, I need the money to survive, so I'm putting my kids through school. It's like, all right,
Okay.
let's follow this thought process down a little bit more. Right? You want your kids to get this good education. So your job that you're burnt out from is connected to a financial outcome which supports the kids. Right? Where are you drawing your energy from? Well, I draw it from kids and making sure my kids are successful. It's like, okay.
That's noble.
All right. So when you voluntarily endure something for a greater purpose, then you will get more energy to achieve that but you've got to connect it to the purpose.
Yeah.
Right? And let's talk about what burnout looks like at the end. I mean, like proper burnout. So you and I, when we were deployed, or when you and I have been in those organisations, we work with our platoon sergeants. And you and I both had a conversation with a platoon sergeant where he came up and goes, hey boss, you gotta go have a sleep. It's like, no, I can't sleep yet. I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Like, you've got to sleep. It's like, there's something different in the way he said that. It's like, all right, 2 hours. I'm going to go, how long? And he's like, 2 hours. All right, cool. Go lay down. They let you sleep for 6. And you wake up and you're like, oh, I was about to make some bad decisions. You really look at your planning iterations. You have a look at some of the decisions you were going to make. You're like, yeah, I was going to make some bad decisions.
And that's the spin-off, isn't it? You're no good to anyone if you go down.
That. All right. So it's like, how do you take care of yourself to avoid the burnout? Because actual burnout, like real-time burnout, means you will make bad decisions and affect a lot of people. That's different.
That's when disaster scales.
Right. And then you're not going to make better decisions, and it's going to end up worse, or burn out further. So self-care in here, as much as I hate to say the term, but self-care is important.
Yep.
But who or what?
It's self-care, but it's not self-indulgence.
That's different.
That's a different thing.
Yeah. And so who's the objectivity, or what is the objectivity that's providing you the triggers or the conditions, or showing you, like, how are you actually able to see when your decision-making ability is falling by the wayside?
That self-care, self-indulgence piece is something we've never talked about. It's a good topic to unravel.
One to pull apart.
Some people don't want to push past any point of uncomfortability.
Yep.
The clinical data that sits behind that is the stress performance curve. We perform best when we're under the right and appropriate amounts of stress, proportionate and commensurate with that task.
And our capabilities.
Right? And now we used to play that game in a game of tolerances, right? You'd push, you'd see they're about to break. And then you'd wind it back just a tiny smidge, hold the space, take the learnings, get them reset, and then you'd push the curve. You'd push it again, you'd push it again, you'd push it again. If you just kept hammering it, it'd fall off the end of a cliff. And
Quick.
And when it goes, it's done, and we get capitulation. No one wins that.
And that you see people's brains shut down. It's not like
they fight, flight, freeze. They're to cortisol.
It's not I don't want to go to work today.
Yeah.
It's that person's not moving.
Yeah.
Like they're not moving.
That's an amygdala hijack situation. That's a different beast.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't want that, but we do want close to it. And so it behoves us as individuals to really be pushing the tolerances on these things at an individual level, but knowing the rules and the boundaries of the game insofar that we're doing it on our terms and with our rules, of the game considered.
Well, if you're not stepping into it voluntarily and you're not challenging yourself, things are always going to be harder.
Yeah.
Like that, I'll use all-encompassing language here because it is. It's like if you don't voluntarily step into the situation and go, you know what, this is going to be hard. Expectation manage ourselves. This is going to be hard. It's going to take a piece. I'm going to do it anyway and see where we land. Whereas if you go, or it's forced on you, and that might be the case. If people aren't voluntarily stepping into it, they're going to hit burnout quicker.
Yep.
Right. If they assume that everything is just coming down on them, right, and then this probably, if you were to go into it deep, it probably leans into the performance punishment piece as well.
Yeah.
You see people that are very good, high performing, they achieve a task, they just keep getting more tasks, but they just happen to keep going. They get challenge. Now, the poor leader or the leader that's not aware enough of their team will sit there and go, oh, they can just keep handling more. It's like, oh, you're trading on a currency that's finite there.
There's and then there's another piece in this is like pick your hard.
That one.
Pick your hard, because now you and I, we work with everyone from tactical to operational to strategic, everyone from the CEO to the janitor.
Yep.
Right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, I mean that in a literal sense.
Yep.
So one of the things I would say as a character snapshot of every CEO I've ever met, I've never met a lazy one.
Yep.
I've never met a lazy CEO. Okay? Now, some of them are pretty smart about how they use their energy, but they spend their time trying to think about how they solve a problem before they dive into it.
Yep.
So don't confuse quantity of work with quality of work. That's a different problem set altogether. But if you might be trying to push the tolerances on that stress performance curve to be at optimal performance for long periods of time, as in order to achieve the effect you're after. Your why might be, well, I'm striving to be the best in my game. I'm trying to get to the point of being a CEO. Well, the Pareto principle explains how a very small percentage of the community do the vast majority of the work, but they also end up in the positions of decision-making and authority. It's like, and every time you reset the game, the same effect occurs with different people at the top of the pack.
Yep.
So don't underestimate. You might be playing around with this uncomfortability space, but don't assume uncomfortability is bad.
Yep.
So this game about burnout is real. It should be understood. It should be acknowledged, but you should be pushing yourself towards hard work at all times, providing that hard work is working towards goals, and those goals are long-term in nature, and you're picking your hard in the short term, and it's superseding, the uncomfortabilities to get to the long term.
It's why it's called fatigue management, not fatigue aversion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well.
Cheers.
Cheers.